Teachers, who's the worst parent you've ever encountered and how did you deal with them? When I was teaching 3rd grade, I had a boy named Jacob who went around picking on his classmates. I felt horrible for him because the fact he bullied people wasn't even his fault. He was living with his old-fashioned granddad who had used Jacob's parents' death as a teaching tool, teaching Jacob that crying wouldn't bring his parents back and that real men were tough and didn't show weakness. I remember the incident that started everything. A kid in the yard had just dislocated his shoulder and was crying, and when Jacob saw it, he ran over to the kid. But instead of helping, he started calling the boy a girl for crying and telling him that his granddad said he had to toughening up the sissies like you. I remember being horrified, and I immediately called Frank, Jacob's granddad, to come in and explain why he was encouraging bullying. Frank arrived at our conference completely defensive. He told me, back in my day, men were men. He dismissed my concerns, saying Jacob was learning to be strong like his father would have wanted. Frank stated he didn't trust brainwashed liberal teachers pushing a feminine agenda and emphasized he trusted real experience and proven science, not feelings. After that meeting, Frank became even more rigid at home. He started telling Jacob I was trying to feminize him and increased his anti-emotion rhetoric. Jacob's behavior got worse, as he now started actively hitting boys who cried about missing parents or pets. When that started happening, I decided to escalate things. I compiled a ton of research on emotional suppression in boys and the harm it does. I called Frank in for another meeting, to which he reluctantly showed up, and added I presented Frank with scientific studies and even shared something personal. My nephew had attempted sewer slide because his parents taught him to bottle everything up. I told him this was the path he was leading Jacob down. I told him, if you trust science like you said you do, then start teaching him what actually being a man is. Of course, this didn't work. Frank dismissed the research as liberal propaganda and told me Jacob was going to continue toughening up his classmates and there was nothing I could do about it. I remember feeling so angry. I told him I had no choice but to involve the administration if Jacob's harmful behavior continued. That's when Frank told me to do my worst. And so, just like that, the two of us made our way down to the principal's office. The principal, Mr. Morrison, was in his 70s and a Korean War veteran. When we entered Morrison's office, I could tell Frank was expecting Mr. Morrison to agree with him. Frank confidently explained his parenting methods, certain he would be backed up against the liberal teacher. But then Mr. Morrison opened his mouth, and I watched Frank's face visibly drop. Ms. Wilde is correct here. Kids need to be taught to express their emotions. Frank looked stunned. But back in the past, we also had slaves and didn't give patients anesthesia for surgery. Times change. Frank went quiet. But this is how my father raised me, and I turned out just fine. Mr. Morrison and I exchanged glances. And how do you feel about your father, Frank? I hate the bastard. Why? Exactly, Frank. You hate him because he raised you as a robot, not as a human. What's your point? My point is, if you don't change your ways, Jacob will end up broken, alone, and he will hate you till the day you die. Frank went red, then totally silent. Is this why he refuses to talk to me during dinner? When Frank said that, we knew we had to do something more than just talk to him. After some more and back forth, Morrison mandated that Frank attend family counseling and parenting classes. Surprisingly, Frank seemed open enough to it, telling us he was willing to give it a shot. Fast forward about a month, he came in to personally thank us for guiding him. He admitted to being wrong, something I said was very brave of him. Jacob had stopped picking on kids overnight, and as a result, even made some friends. The two of them attended grief counseling to help them both process Jacob's parents' death properly. By elementary school graduation, Frank openly cried seeing Jacob receive his diploma, and I couldn't be prouder.